Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Sorry. Good evening and welcome to everybody who's here. I'm Councillor Sayal Raza, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's now just gone past 7 p.m. and I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the committee, my fellow scrutineers, partners from the Metropolitan Police, members and officers of the council and members of the public, whether present with us in Hounslow House or watching the committee on council's YouTube channel. We have a substantial agenda today with our main focus on two issues that matter a great deal to local residents: neighbourhood policing and keeping Hounslow tidy. We also have several shorter items to scrutinise: an update on Council's delivery plan, a report on progress against previous recommendations from the Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel, updates from the current work of all scrutiny panels and North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, an update from West London NHS Trust on their plans for acute mental health provision, and our regular review of the work programme and urgent business. We are all now seasoned scrutineers, but for the benefit of our guests, I'll take a few moments to set out how the meeting will work. As chair, I'll run the meeting and invite people to speak. This year, I hope we can combine questions and observations to allow more fluid discussion. I shall invite our guests, whether the police, the cabinet member, or where relevant council officer, to introduce their report. I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I, or Councillor Foot, my vice chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussion and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members and our guests, and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us to frame a meaningful recommendation. Our time this evening is finite. It should go without saying that we will treat our guests with courtesy, and whilst the issue before us are important topics with real-world impact, we will ensure our questions and debate are measured and constructive. Let's begin. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence, declarations of interest and any other communications from members. I have received apology from Councillor Mayor. Are there any apologies I'm unaware of? No, thank you. And do any members of the committee have an interest to declare or any other communications they wish to share? If so, please do so now. Thank you. We move on to agenda item number 2. We have before us the minutes of the 19th of June committee meeting. This was the first meeting of the municipal year, focused on appointments to the role of vice chair and scrutiny panel chairs. Do members have an issue of accuracy to raise on a particular set of minutes? If so, then please let me know. Otherwise, we would agree the minutes now. Thank you. We move on to agenda item number 3, neighbourhood policing. One of our main items of business tonight is to review neighbourhood policing in the borough. We are joined this evening by 2 representatives of the Metropolitan Police, Superintendent Sean Wilson and Superintendent Anil Puri. Thank you both for being here. Crime is an emotive issue for local residents. I'm sure the committee will be keen to understand the situation as the Metropolitan Police sees it, what the current and future picture of neighbourhood policing is, and to ask questions about how Hounslow fits into the London-wide picture. Sean, Anil, may I ask you to introduce your report? You have 5 minutes, please.
Did you say 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. So my name is Sean Wilson, Chief Superintendent, BCU Commander. I know most of you. So I'll introduce also Anil.
Anil Puri, I lead for neighbourhoods in Hounslow.
I will start with the local elements. I will ask Anil to give you the update because I know you want to hear very much what's relevant to Hounslow. I'll then cover off what's happening from the Met side and what that means for Hounslow. So if I hand over to Anil for the local report, and then I'll do the strategic side.
Thank you, panel. So I'll start by covering off our resource picture in terms of neighbourhood policing in Hounslow. So just for the benefit of everyone, I joined Hounslow in April of this year, and I was posted to the neighbourhood policing strand. So upon taking over, not that it was anybody's fault in particular, but the resourcing deficit at that moment was around 30 to 35% in terms of police officers and PCSOs, sorry, police officers across all of Hounslow's 22 wards. So that situation started to get worse because people were leaving, they'd been selected for other roles. And after careful consultation with Mr. Wilson, we decided that Hounslow's resources, the deficit in the resources needed to be recovered. So some decisions were made, namely, firstly, our funded team arrangements with the council. 7 of those officers were repurposed and placed into the wards where there were vacancies. Together with that, there was various other officers available across the BCU who have also joined us in Hounslow. And we have about 5 more people joining us before the end of the year. And I'm very pleased to say that we will be up to 100% in terms of resourcing by the end of the year. So right now it's very healthy. It'll be even healthier by December. So I'll just pause there in case there's any questions on the resourcing.
Yep. Sorry.
Yes.
Could I just say a thank you for bringing Hamworth up to date? I mean, we've been down with one PCSO who I have to commend for doing a wonderful job on his own there for quite some considerable time, and odd efforts where I think one of your officers was on long-term sickness, and he filled in, and I think he needs congratulations for the work that he's done there. And I on behalf of the Hamworth residents, would like to say that.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to Georgie as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, well done on getting us almost up to full strength, according to this chart. Obviously, Hounslow's team is down. And I don't want to put a damper on it, but how can we make neighbourhood policing seem far more attractive so people stay for longer? Because, yes, we'll be up to strength by the end of the year, but supposing people start to leave again, go into other jobs, those sorts of things. I think being on the beat needs to be made more attractive, perhaps.
I do agree with that. Part of the problem was the original advertising to join the Met had people abseiling out of helicopters, fast boats up and down the Thames, and fast cars, blue lights on high-speed pursuits. And in fairness, it was getting the wrong calibre of candidate. Not to say that we don't do that. We do, although we stop the helicopters now, and firearms tactics have moved on, but it's changed. So we are changing, bringing in more community-minded people. We have also now, one of the biggest challenges I've given to all 3 of my superintendents has been increased number of outreach teams. So one of my key priorities for policing right across the BCU is recruitment, and recruiting more locally rather than people who live miles away.
Do please continue with the report.
So I would just say that the population of the wards by policing officers and staff was a priority, and what we have done by fulfilling our resourcing requirements has met the mayoral commitment as well. 2 DWOs and 1 PCSO per ward across London. Now we do have 2 wards in Hounslow where the requirement is for 1 extra DWO, but right now that's Hounslow Central and Felton North. But right now, we're quite satisfied that we have adequate coverage, and should the need arise, we have the opportunity to flex resources from the other wards to deal with any policing issues that should arise that requires an enhanced footprint. In terms of the Hounslow Town Centre team, it's fair to say there's a number of vacancies there, but our priority was the wards. Moving forward, as and when new people are recruited to the BCU, I will be making bids to fulfill those vacancies as well. suffice to say, I've advertised for those positions to be filled. So as soon as they are filled, I will make sure that the appropriate candidates are put in place.
Moving on, so we have the first round this year of the Mayor's Uplifting Police and Community Support Officers. I'm pleased to report we've been awarded 54 PCSOs for the whole command. I've taken the decision that we allocate, having had a chat with all three sets, everyone wants more than a third, but we're going to go for a third of that for each borough. So we'll be having 18 additional uplifting posts of peace and community support officers, and that recruiting has started, and we're working through now the most where it is most needed. Also, I've had a long chat with my volunteer cadet coordinators. I see as much as we can intercept early behaviour prevents criminality and victimality, if that's a word, probably isn't, later on in one's life. So I've tasked our volunteer cadet coordinators to increase the number of volunteer cadets, but of course that needs an uplift in volunteers and uplift in officers. I'm willing to invest willing to invest in additional officers to be volunteer cadet coordinators to increase those numbers, but of course there will be a plea going out for local volunteers who are willing to be, obviously with the requisite vetting, who can support us with supporting around that. We have the new Met for London. We've got the second event that'll be coming up, and all our events need to be completed by the 22nd of December. Now, the key areas which are going to be affecting Hounslow. Number one, we're centralising proactivity and tasking. At the moment, I have to be honest, my key areas of concern for Hounslow Borough are very much Feltham and down there. And I'm seeing interesting links with Feltham, what's going over the border in Hillingdon, in Hayes. But I'm focusing a lot of my efforts where I'm seeing the violence at the moment, I'm seeing down in Feltham. So that is where our proactivity tasking is taking place at the moment. It's not having the impact I would like in terms of my violence figures, but it will do once I can get the key players taken out of circulation. That means brought to justice. The other element within is going to be strengthening public protection. So safeguarding in old money. So there is an uplift of 32 officers, police officers, into public protection arrangements for policing public protection. And we are very heavily engaged with that. And so the safeguarding capability will increase. I will have those people in post by the 1st of April next year. This is one of the areas I cannot get wrong. It is my highest risk area, public protection. So public protection, for those who don't know, is domestic abuse, mental health, child abuse investigation teams, rape and serious sexual offences, and of course it's multi-agency safeguarding hubs, etc. So it's a huge. Every single asset of that flashes red on my risk register, but it's the one area where we're investing. We're investing in. Next, I'll talk in terms of volume crime and the volume crime investigation.
Your time's almost up, but if you could wrap it up quickly, that'd be nice.
Certainly. So we are reforming how we investigate volume crime, namely 75 to 80% of crime that's reported across the command. So it's low level, low impact, but high in community confidence. So we're doing an awful lot of work around that, which should see improvements next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We now sort of move on to the questions of the report to be addressed from our panel members to our guests. So if I could just ask our panel members one by one, absolutely fine. If you want to ask questions to the police. Yeah, Councillor Sharma, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I would just like to ask, why are some parts of the borough, the team, more proactive than others? And what sort of engagement is there with local members? I say this because I'm Brentford East councillor, and Jim Cope previously, and now Sergeant Ali. They were very communicative. I could email them. I would get a response back. Even with my PCSOs, I can email them. I'll be guaranteed to get a response later on in the day or the next day. But I am aware that other parts of the borough, the communication isn't so good. So what can we do to make that better?
you take it first and I'll take it?
Okay, yeah. So thank you for that question, firstly. So you're right. The communication has always been an issue with some of our officers and not replying. So my plan with that is that right now our intranet site is quite outdated. And once we have the officers in place, we'll have their photographs and phone numbers, their direct phone numbers uploaded onto the internet together with their emails, and they'll be there and they'll receive your calls and they will reply. I will put a charter standard on that for them to reply within a certain amount of time. They all have phones now, they can be contacted, but you're right. What I can do is circulate their phone numbers more widely, which I'm happy to do. And then they're happy to take calls as well. So we'll do that.
What I would say is I'm conscious of the fact that when they're off duty, still receiving phone calls. So we're going to look at a model where we have almost like a buddy ward system. So if it can't be dealt with online, if you feel something must be dealt with immediately, and I would argue maybe you need to be dialing 999 or 101 at that point, but of course we all do different hours and have different types of work lives, including yourselves. So I'll be working on a system where it can divert into another neighbourhood or a number, and then then they can assess whether that needs to be dealt with then and there or not. All I'd say is we tend not to have them working overnight duty because I don't need them then. I need them during the day when they can speak to yourselves.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, I appreciate that. Obviously, we all need time off, and you work very hard. But I think what my question is meaning as well is that sorry, I'm gone blank. Yeah, what I'm meaning is that sort of like some parts of the ward, even then, there's no response at all. So, I mean, it might not be anything serious because obviously if it is serious, we're going to advise our residents to call 999 or do the online report for 101 if it's non-serious. But if it's like if there's a section 60, for example, that's going to be put out in our ward, we're not normally told as councillors, we're not told that this is happening. We find it on your social media. So that type of communication would be really good.
So that's a really good point. There have been issues recently around exactly what you're saying, that certain things like Section 60 or notification of incidents weren't reaching members. I apologise for that. I had another superintendent look at that for the whole command this week. We realised that some of the lists were outdated. Some names have dropped off the list. I don't know why. It shouldn't be, but this should be, so what's today, Tuesday, this should be rectified by Wednesday. I was given set a deadline of Wednesday for that. So hopefully going forward, a number of things that we discussed last week will be have been put in place. We're doing a lot of work over the weekend and the early part of this week. I'm hoping that'll be rectified, but what I will ask, please feedback if that is still not happening, because I'm very keen to get the right communications out at the right time.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on the excellent work that you are doing and for bringing us to close to 100% strength. I'm seeing in the report about the knife crimes, there has been a significant increase in overall crimes involving knives. What are we specifically doing apart from stop and search to control that?
So I think Anna and I probably could talk for a very long time on this one. So, Chair, you'll have to stop me at some point. So we're doing a lot of work around it. So I'm concerned about the increase in knife crime. Interestingly, I'm touching wood when I say this, our homicide rate has gone down, probably because of trauma, etc. And where we get into hospitals is a lot better, and trauma support at the scene. But our knife crime is going up. To understand why it's going up, I need to understand the cause of the knife crime. Although they may not necessarily be gangs, but it is that kind of activity that is now driving this. It's as simple as that. So yes, we are using stop and search. I have had and will continue to have a number of proactive operations, which won't always include the neighbourhood officers because they simply don't have the resilience or the skill set to do what I want them to do. So we're doing a combination of that, but also we're starting to do work with the schools officers, getting into schools to understand what is happening. I'm not so naive to think that actually some of those who are responsible aren't all local. which is when I mentioned earlier on in my talk, some coming down from north from Hayes. There is a bit, sometimes you can easily call this a turf war. It's not necessarily that, but there has been tensions out there which we have been trying to get to the bottom of and disperse. We have a number of resources available. When we get wind of it, we consider Section 61s and dispersal orders. We also think of it once we start to identify people. We also talk about antisocial behaviour orders, etc., and slow time. There is no one fix to this, unfortunately. My plea to members and your communities is where you start learning that there are tensions beginning to rise, please inform us, because it allows me then to be upstream in terms of what I do in the area. I take over tasking for the entire commanders of next month, which means I've got 3 boroughs worth of assets that I can push into the area. And my focus at the moment is Feltham and Hayes. Invariably comes with that is displacement. And therefore we will chase displacement as well. And that is going to, but there is no easy fix to this. I think some of it is the way the drugs are now being released onto the streets, where they're moving money around. Some of this is driven with violence against women and girls, particularly youngsters, who get absorbed into this lifestyle. Am I worried? I have to be frank with you. Yes, I am. This is not unique to this borough. We can have 12 BCU commanders in the room, and we're all saying the same thing. It has been not what hasn't been helps has been the adverse media attention that directed towards policing. Notwithstanding, we do have our issues, but I absolutely have to garner the support for policing within those communities, because I have the asset to deal with it, but I need the support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Mullock, please.
Yeah, thank you for the update which you have given. Just like to ask a question. Heston West Ward and Heston Central Ward, quite a few residents has complained there's a significant increase of burglaries. Do we have any statistic, and what are we doing about it?
We do. The answer to both. So the answer to the question is, so I'll focus on burglaries. I'm going to focus specifically on aggravated burglaries. This is burglaries where violence has been used. There has been an increase in burglaries. It is easy to, so I will stick at the moment to residential burglaries rather than the commercial burglaries, because that is what impacts on people's lives the most. To understand the problem, those residential burglaries tend to be targeted. They are individuals and teams that are doing it. Occasionally, we get one-off opportunities, but the bulk of these are targeting very well organised teams. I have got teams working on this as we speak. I don't want to go into too much detail on it, and it is focused across the 3 boroughs. It's focused down here in Hounslow. So we know about it. We know the areas. We think we know who's doing it as well. And I say think. But we're doing a lot of work on this, and I've had teams working quite long hours doing this over the last 2 to 3 weeks, because we realised this was a problem at the end of August, becoming a problem at the end of August. Some of it is seasonal. Some of it will target the family gold. So we have specific burglaries targeting gold seasons, where traditionally gold in forms of, festive gold. And I appreciate that lots of weddings are happening over the autumn, etc. And so we do understand that. But how they target, identify, target, and then close in on the victims is frankly quite shocking. So we're doing a lot of work around it, and reassured we're not sitting doing nothing.
I'd just like to let you know, I'm the one of the target as well. I have given the police the video, evidence, everything. And this over 2 months ago. Luckily, I was indoor. They wasn't successful. They just got in through the first door, but they couldn't get in with the second door because I was there. I confronted them. But I still haven't got any update. What happened to those video which have provided them?
I'm sorry you haven't. I will after, if I can, or analyze, if we can take if you've got a number or something like that, but I will follow that up separately, and I'll make sure you get a response there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Butt, please.
My question is for police. Yes. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Why Hounslow High Street isn't at full capacity? There is so much crime and fear of crime there.
So So firstly, as I alluded to earlier on, my apologies. It's right to say that we're not up to strength with our town centre team. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have officers. We have a Hounslow Central Ward team as well, who work alongside them. So there's always officers around. You may not be able to see them because they're doing various bits of proactivity, and they are very proactive in what they do. But I assure you, they are there, and they're 7 days a week, from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. They're there. Unfortunately, if they have to make an arrest and there's only 2 or 3 of them there, then 2 of them are gone. So it just leaves 1 officer. So once we've recruited in to those vacant positions, we'll be in a lot better position to be more visible for the public and act as a greater deterrent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Biddle, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the attention you've brought to Chiswick after the shoplifting drama. I agree with you totally about media coverage. It made us and it made traders very angry indeed, because they knew that they didn't want to make Chiswick more of a target in terms of shoplifting and less of an attractive place to go to spend time in. And I tried with the meeting to keep it free of journalists, but unfortunately it was gate crashed by one. But so far nothing's come out of it. So thank you very much, and particularly to Mike Binns and Jim Cope and our ward teams who were there on the day. We really do appreciate that. I was interested in your comments about PCSOs and 18 more in the borough. This is very ward specific. I don't know if it applies to other wards, but we've got part of a PCSO because she's semi-retired. We have 2 days a week of Cheryl, who's fantastic, but what you can do in 2 days a week is not the same as what you can do in 5 days a week. So I was putting in a little bid there for any wards that only have partial PCSOs.
That's all noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The real problem, it seems, and yes, the real problem seems to me is that everybody wants to see a policeman walking by when they are looking. And they're not looking when you're walking by necessarily. Whenever I go out, I bump into my PCs and my PCSO together or separately, but I'm not the typical person. I'm out perhaps more than others, and I'm not necessarily behind a window or a door at home. So I don't know what can be done about that in terms of telling us where they've been perhaps, or just reassuring us that they do go out on patrol and that the patrols cover all the wards, the roads in the wards. It's a communications point, really.
I think you're right about the communications point. I think it's also a resilience point, because 2 PCs and a PCSO per ward on a specific shift pattern. And normally we'd like them all on at the same time so they can work together. Because what I'm looking to do, because I appreciate behind some of this was the closure of Chiswick Police Station. So I'm conscious of the fact that some of the dynamics that sits behind this as well. We are doing a bit of work around our estate strategy at the moment. What that means is, so we're approaching other agencies, including the local authorities, around sharing accommodation, using additional accommodation, because we've got a commitment of every single ward, a place in the ward being within a 20-minute walk for each officer or PCSO. So that will mean we need to find local accommodation. I'm conscious of the fact that we only have one front counter, but what I'm looking to do is start maximising ward surgeries, because sometimes it's going to be very, very difficult to go walking out and be seen by everybody who wishes to see us. And logistically, it could be a while. You may not see them for months, not because they're not there, but because, you know, the way your lifestyle works doesn't necessarily work with happen with the patrol strategy. What I'm looking to do with each of the neighbourhood superintendents is that we work on a touchdown surgeries. Many PCs already designated ward officers do something similar, but we have that consistency on an ongoing basis. So in some ways, it's turning it around slightly. You know that they're going to be at this particular location at this particular time undertaking certain functions.
Thank you. Can I come back with a supplementary? Thanks very much. That's very useful. It sort of ties in with, so our ward police are within a very short walk of part of the ward, but a very long walk of the rest of it. So it's quite difficult to bring that into practice for everybody. And one of the points that was made at one of our earlier public meetings in Chiswick was about the flexing point that you've made, flexing people in when needed. But that, of course, means that flexing out happens. And when people are rushing over to Feltham because they're needed there, they're not necessarily in Chiswick. So that's another issue. And my question, I suppose, is what is it you would like? 2 PCs and 1 PCSO per ward might not be enough ever. And what is it, if you're allowed to say, that you would actually like in terms of local neighbourhood policing?
Okay, so I'm going to turn the question slightly round, but I am going to answer it. So you could stick rigidly to a 2-and-1 model, 2 PCs, 1 PCSO, but knowing there's some wards that are so quiet that it doesn't necessarily merit that. But you go somewhere like Hayes Town Centre, which clearly it does. Feltham Town Centre clearly does need something that needs additionality. We need to have some level of flexibility. But I think some of that flexibility isn't just with designated ward officers. The flexibility is where I stretch additional other assets, so such as the proactive teams. As of December, proactivity moves into uniform and plainclothes, separate teams that are not ward officers. And they will be flexed into the wards and then flexed away from them, depending where the issues are. And some of those will be targeted operations, like planned operations. Some of them will be spontaneous. Some of that work will be spontaneous. So what I want to see is a model that has flexibility of assets right across the command. And on occasionally, when I need to call to the central Met Police side of things, I need to say, for example, territorial support group, because things have got out of hand, which is unusual down here. But if etc. But if it does, so that for me is what I mean by flexibility. I won't go with a number because I could dream on all sorts of numbers, and you put police officers in an area, they will find work. You can put a police officer in an empty room, they'll find work, because that's the nature of policing. People are naturally, curious. So I won't give numbers, but for me, it is about us being able to have that visibility with the community. One thing I don't like is ward officers in cars. I want them on pedal bikes. I want them on the buses. I want them on foot. I toyed with the idea of e-scooters, but I was told not to go there. But in short, I need them out there. Being where you can say, officer, can I just have a word? Yes. How can I help you, madam? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have more, but let somebody else go next.
Councillor Prosotto, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With regards to the Casey review, what do you guys think are the most pertinent recommendations for Hounslow and your plans for implementing them?
So the absolute number one is public confidence. It's simple as that. So we are already onto the professional standards side. In other words, getting the bad cops out. And we're working on that. We've got a plan. It's a timeline. It will take time. Mercifully, not that many of ours, but some of them are ours. That's modern policing. I'm told those who work in other industries have the same problem. But the number one piece for me is public confidence, which is why we're having a second New Met for London event. We'll do it slightly differently this time, different location into those communities that are more hard to reach. But it is about, so the first step into that is the strengthening neighbourhood policing, and that is the 2 designated ward officers per ward, and then the uplift of PCSOs, because that is the face-to-face visibility. If I don't have that, then everything else is going to be very difficult to achieve.
With regards to the public confidence, how are you engaging with community groups that might have more criticisms to make or about stop and search and things like that?
Okay, so thank you for mentioning stop and search in particular. So the Met, you may have seen it publicised, but is launching the stop and search charter. So what the intention is over a 3-phased approach is to consult people at various levels within the communities, people like yourself, councillors and chief executives. And then the second phase is to consult, actually get into community groups and youth groups, and basically just capture their feedback on what should be absorbed into a stop and search charter. So in the end, it's developed by the community, it's signed up for by the police, and then it's monitored independently to make sure we stick to what we're doing. So that's one of the main ways that we're kind of building up confidence within the community. And just to put it in context for you, in Hounslow, I think we have roughly about 3,100 stop and searches over a rolling 12-month period. That's about average. And the vast majority of those are between the age of 18 and 24. So they're the people we want to engage. We've already started engagement, a liaison with school heads, and particularly West Thames College, to try and get this try to address this hard to reach concerns from the students within the college. The main people we want to kind of engage is those who are most likely to be impacted by a stop and search encounter. And then hopefully going forward, using the feedback, we'll have some procedural justice built into our stop and search encounters going forward. By that, I mean explaining to people why we're doing something, whatever it is we're doing, we're explaining to them why we're doing it. Basically getting them on side and say, look, we're not targeting you specifically because you're just in a certain location, but we have some reason to believe that a search is appropriate in a certain situation. So procedural justice will come into it a lot, but the main thing is getting your feedback. And I'll be issuing, if the chairs doesn't mind, I'll issue you the feedback form. What it is, it's an electronic form. You go into a website, we'll give you a code, and if you wouldn't mind just telling us what you would like in a stop and search charter. It's basically 5 questions. That's not difficult, and we can capture your feedback direct. So like I said, that's the high level feedback we'll be getting, including MPs, councillors, people like yourselves, and then underneath that we'll sit the community.
Thank you for that. Yep, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy for you to share with the panel as well. That's absolutely fine. Councillor Foot, please.
Yeah, one of the most recent events that we're having in Hamworth Ward is out of borough gangs coming into the ward and then ending up in fights on Butts Farm Estate because that's where the other, if you like, that's where they're targeting. But it is obviously it's a problem for normal residents who are living on those estates. You were aware of those particular problems?
We are aware. We think also we know the gangs involved. Interestingly, they're not all coming from the same place. Some coming from the north, coming down from the north from the Harrow Borough, from the Brent Borough, or from the North Holt area. Interestingly, we've found some coming over from Surrey as well. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the Surrey ones which are interesting.
I was going to say, we are making big steps, arresting people. Well, every time we do that, it leaves a vacuum and somebody else fills the gap. So in terms of the organised element of it. So we are working on it, and going forward as part of our overall strengthening neighbourhoods plan, we have something called Clear, Hold and Build. And that's a Home Office plan, and it focuses on serious and organised crime and organised crime groups. It's a major development. We're going to be introducing it across Hounslow soon when it's been developed, and we're working with our community safety partnerships to make sure that it succeeds. But we will keep you consulted with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just for time reasons, we do need to move on to the discussion side. I do know there's some pressing sort of questions we can, of course, ask, but this is really a discussion for the panel members. I'm more than happy to sort of ask all panel members for their questions or what they even recommend. Is it okay if you can still answer those questions? Yeah, thank you. So everything that we've heard. So if I could just ask panel members to discuss what we've heard from the report, please. Councillor Bidoff, please. And then Councillor Sharma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
If I could pick up on the SUS laws, the stop and search laws point. I'm old enough to remember the SUS laws and the riots of the 80s. So from my perspective, when I read the brief and saw what you've just said, which is that you're going to have a charter that's involves the community and is agreed by whatever it is, I thought that was an excellent move, because you've got to get people on side for something that can be so contentious. So that was going to be my question point. One of the things that we learned through the shoplifting exercise in Chiswick, and after we'd fixed your meeting, I met an awful lot more traders, including chains. I had good connections with a lot of the independents. But it turns out that businesses and residents have the most extraordinary window onto our world, and they see things day in, day out, recurring. Somebody going down there to do some kind of deal, coming back, somebody else seeing another part of the route. There's an awful lot of information available in the community and no way of capturing it. So I wonder if there is anything that we could do, that you could do. It's nationwide, it doesn't just apply to us here, to capture this information that everybody thinks everybody else knows. That was the problem with this particular several incidents.
So the Met is a bit late to the game with this, but they've started using, we're rolling out next door training as we speak to all our officers. So they will all, we will have a next door account. So if you see something that's suspicious, you'll be able to use that social media app and upload that information, and our officers in that ward will get that information straight away.
So I'd worry about anonymity.
Can I just say, do you mean sort of local intelligence?
Yes, absolutely. Somebody was seeing, we had a prolific shoplifter who is currently in custody, and somebody would see part of her route, and somebody else would see another bit of her route. Somebody else knows where a family member lives, those sorts of things.
So those sort of things. So Nextdoor will be really good for that. It's not just for that, but it can be one of the conduits for that. The other conduit we have is OWL as well. Everybody knows they're using OWL around Hounslow. And the other thing we have now rolling out is called Zen City. Now that is another social media app which allows you to respond immediately to an incident to get some live feedback. So there's various communication tools being rolled out, which I'm sure will aid all the things that you just.
But potentially, I'm worried about anonymity with Nextdoor. I think people would be reluctant to load information when they've got a profile and they've got a name and it says which district they live in. It could be quite awkward.
Okay, in that case, then, when we spoke earlier on about contacting our officers direct, so we will have kind of some email addresses and things that you'll be able to use to provide that information, which the officers can then treat with confidence.
Yes, it's as if though there was something that I was told today, but if I could pass it on to the local ward team, which of course I will do, and I realized I had to go back to the resident and say, but what about this, i.e. some identification information. It's as if you need another section on 101, but not necessarily 101, that prompts the questions. Any distinguishing features or any particular times, those sorts of things, because it's quite easy just to send a very short note on Nextdoor and not actually provide anything substantial.
So I would say if you see a crime in action, obviously 999 or 101, but for anything suspicious that you think, I'll either get in touch with the ward officers, or please, if you're worried about anonymity, don't use the social media tools that we're rolling out. Just get in touch with the ward officers who will look into the matter.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma, please.
Yeah. Thanks for all your updates this evening, and thank you for the service that you provide and our police officers do provide for our community. I would like to say, obviously we touched on the communication, but I'm in agreement with Joe actually with regards to on the street that the witnesses are seeing every day. So like our neighbours are seeing, our residents are seeing. I mean, if there was an incident actually in Chiswick a couple of weeks ago where a lady passed away on a doorstep in a shop. From what I've read and what I've seen and what I've heard from community members as well, although Chiswick's not my ward, that the dealer can be pinpointed, is that the person is on the same spot every day supplying drugs to this person. And, you know, this is one needless death in my mind, and, you know, may she rest in peace. But yeah, so I think we do need to be obviously the communication, but we do need to be making more of an effort to be able to get that intelligence back to you.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you.
This is a real judgment call, because we've seen, and I've attended, even I go back to my early days as a police officer, I attended a number of drug-related deaths. And where I could, we arrested the dealer. I arrested the dealer, the person who I was convinced around. I tried to get him charged with murder, but they weren't having it. It's a real difficult one, I'm afraid, that besets us now when it's drugs-related deaths. Unless there's been any other issues involved at the time. We treat all deaths following Stephen Port, which we're all aware of. Every death we treat properly. You know, we start from the point of suspicion, not the point of natural causes, and then we try to scale down as opposed to scaling up, not the other way around.
Thank you for that. Just a few bits for me, just to the panel here, and I'm sure you can sort of answer the questions there. Very long time ago, we used to have sort of an amnesty of sort of weapons that you can go to your local hub, police station, whatever, anonymously and drop your weapons. Can we not do something similar within Hounslow?
So, so something that's quite recent, I've signed off, is 3 new knife bins for the borough. So we already have some in existence, but the 3 new ones going to be for Hounslow Central, Hounslow Heath, and Hounslow West, and I think an additional one for second additional one in Feltham West as well. So they've been. I've signed off the purchase of those, and they should be in place once after they're procured.
And in the future, will there be sort of more coming on?
If they're required, yes. But if I could share some photos of when we empty these bins out, the sort of knives that are recovered from there, they're not your normal kitchen knives. They're like proper military style knives. So yeah, it's good that they're taken out of people's hands and out of circulation. And anything we can do to kind of aid that, we will do. So right now we've ordered 3 more, and if we need more, we'll order more.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. The other thing for me is it would be lovely to have you back in a year's time. Would you be happy to do that?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
Would the panel agree on that as well? Thank you.
Because for us, it's the opportunity to see you, to meet you all collectively. So we're always happy to come back, because for me, I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll certainly do that. I've got 2. Councillor Sharma. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final question. With the stop and search, what is the crime that the people are being stopped and searched for?
Sorry, my apologies. The vast majority is drugs.
Drugs or weapons. Drugs or weapons.
Yeah.
And what turns out, because drugs is so getting into the psychology of a criminal, or those involved in, when I say criminal, those involved in criminality, particularly with drugs, that drugs is worth money. So it's easier to dispose of a knife, and they'll dispose of a knife because they can pick another one up. But then if they lose the drugs, they owe somebody money for those drugs. It's as simple as that. And it's the economics of that whole drug market the illicit drug market out there.
Can I just double check? Can we also invite the base command as well? Yeah, of all 3 sort of boroughs that you hold.
Oh, you want the
right across as well. So Hillingdon and another
and Ealing.
Ealing, there we are.
Yes, if they have the capacity. Bear in mind they also have scrutiny panels to attend, and I'm going to be going to theirs as well.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. Is there anything else from? Oh, yes, of course, Councillor Biddulph.
Thank you. I was interested in the comment that you made about wanting to have a local base. What does that look like? Because how can we help you identify it? We've been trying in Chiswick to get you a local base, and I was put off it. We need this, we need that, we need all sorts of security. At the meeting with traders, people, particularly supermarkets, offered their canteens, not just for free food and free coffee, but also a place to sit down and do the stuff that you have to do. But what is a base, and how can we help you find them?
So I sincerely hope our officers aren't taking free food. It's an absolute no-no.
They didn't necessarily take it, they were offered it.
Thank you. Right, so it's got to be secure, because the officers will have their equipment. There's one thing to have a touchdown base, that could be anywhere, to be honest with you. You could always set up a pop-up shop or something like that, in a street. But the bit is, because they carry the personal protective equipment, the Parva spray, which is a Section 5 firearm under legislation, they've got the ASPs, they've got the quick cuffs, etc., and in the wrong hands, and they are sold on eBay. They've got their uniform, their armour, etc. It has to be secure. There's also the issue of the IT. Whilst we are getting them all issued with laptops, there's a laptop rollout, but obviously somewhere we're going to have docking stations and things like that. So it's not as, yes, you can operate out of a room, but basically you need to then come down there and operate out for a day. But at some point you need to take your kit off, go out and etc. But that has to be secure. So security is the prime thing, as well as ease of access.
Thank you. We actually
and so
have.
do you have a budget
sorry.
for that? Sorry. Is there a budget for that? Are you paying rent on these locations? What's the...
Yeah, I see the commercial minds creeping in here and the smiles going around the tables. And the answer is yes. And we're working for that, because with some of this stuff, you don't need fully blown police stations. And when you think about Chiswick police stations, wonderful as it was no longer fit for purpose in terms of what we're doing. And modern policing is very much more mobile than it ever has been. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Japanese model where they have cabans. And a very interesting model in Japan that they have. And unfortunately, that won't be implemented here as much as I would like it. But there is a budget. Commercial services, we are thinking about a budget for that, because it'd be cheaper on a budget renting out space as opposed to them buying whole buildings. But that is being worked through. But at the minute, we need appreciation across London what that looks like. We then go to MOPAC, because it's not our money, it's the mayor's money, it's London's money, as I'm sure it is, what comes here as well. And so it's in the balance of what we keep as existing police stations, and then these little bases and how we fund those bases. It may be there are some areas locally where we simply pay for the fitting, we're allowed to use the space, but that's all being worked through in the state strategy at the minute. When we have more on that, I'm very happy to come back and report that into you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Councillor Mullock. Yeah.
Just nice to know we've got quite a few visible police in Hounslow West. We've got a slight problem now. Those drug dealers, they have moved from the Hounslow West to Elmond Road, and there's a blocks of flat there. We do have police patrol there. The only issue is when the drug dealers see the police patrol, they hide behind the flats, and the police do not walk around. The police, could you just request? Residents have requested, if once a police patrol, they do go around the flats as well, and that's where they're hiding when they see them.
Thank you. That's really useful, and no doubt will have hidden what they've got on them as well to come back and collect at a later time. So that's noted, and thank you. Unless you want to say anything more than that,
No, I'll get some patrols directed there.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Neil.
Thank you for that. So we're going to sort of wrap this up a little bit. So it's really just talking about recommendations that we want as a scrutiny panel forward for the officers. So I do have some recommendations from this discussion, and of course it will be sort of voted on this, but commitments to making sure that contact details are available to members, the focus of public confidence from the police. So hopefully within a year's time, we build that sort of confidence up, and just making sure that we do, of course, see you guys next year. That is what I'm sort of proposing as recommendations. Can I have a seconder or? Oh, right.
Can I just add to that?
Okay.
The welcome to the reports of. The welcome to the reports of the 30% reduction that your shortfall that you've got in your workforce currently is seen by the end of the year to be eliminated. I think that's an absolutely welcome asset that we should be saying that we are looking forward to.
Chair, I second that. What have you proposed?
Thank you for Councillor Biddle.
I was just going to add to your main point about contact information.
Sure.
I'm still not sure that we're going down the right route in terms of getting information from the public. It's as if you need a what I've seen at metpolice.co.uk or something like that. Just a generic email address that it would then be triaged to the right BCU or the right wards.
we do have online reporting.
I know, but it doesn't prompt. It's not the same as a crime has just occurred, either is occurring or has happened earlier. It's more what I've seen passing my window every day. It's that kind of information.
Thank you. Let's have a think about that. I'd like to explore that further. with you. I might ask Anil, Anil Sharma, just have a chat and see how we can develop that.
So we can add local intelligence. Yeah. So okay. So the recommendations will be sort of just adding the local intelligence as well to that. Are we sort of all happy with that? Yeah. So it's just on a vote, and it's just sort of hands up, really. So as long as you're happy with that, that'd be great. Can that be fulfilled? Would you say in about a year's time when we meet next time? Oh.
Before our year end, perhaps, just before the year end, so we can wrap it up in this
Yes,
year.
we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get those sort of dates out to you. That'd be brilliant.
I find somebody who's very technically minded, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's brilliant. That's really good sort of conversation there. I'm really sort of happy with the progress and the remote reports as well. And we do all thank you for and you and your officers for the hard work. And I know it's very, very difficult as well. So, you know, we do need to just bring that persona up a little bit. Many times I've sort of engaged with sort of officers, and they're all good. They're all very good. They're abiding the laws, and it's very, very good to see them to do that as well. So I really, really encourage that sort of work. And of course, going into those communities, absolutely fantastic. We do now need to sort of move on to agenda item number 4. You're more than welcome to stay, or if you do want to leave, that's entirely up to you. Yeah. So agenda item number 4 is keeping sort of Hounslow tidy. When we met to develop our work program in the summer, the cleanliness of the borough was at the forefront of committee thinking. Like our previous item, living in a clean borough is also something residents care about a great deal. The committee's thinking extended beyond a traditional focus on bin collection, the recycling rates, though, and hope to be able to consider how we can work with others with a stake in the responsibility for a cleaner borough. As such, whilst we asked to note the progress made to date on delivering a cleaner Hounslow as set out in the Corporate Plan 2022-26, we also have the chance to inform the ongoing assessment of options for new cleansing operation improvements and make suggestions on improvements, alternate actions, or options we consider appropriate to achieve a cleaner Hounslow by 2026. Any options, actions we consider will support the development of civic pride within our borough. Any areas of further analysis would recommend be explored, further insight into residents' views and perceptions of cleanliness in the borough, and what actions we would recommend to address these. How we would like to be kept appraised of progress. We are joined today by Councillor Lambert, Cabinet Member of Highways, Recycling and Health Integration, and 2 officers, Victoria Lawson, Executive Director of Environment, Culture and Customer Services, and Wayne Stevenson, Director of Environment and Climate. Welcome to you all. Thank you. Councillor Lambert, may I ask you to introduce your report? You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair and Committee, for inviting us to discuss the things that we're doing to improve and enhance that we've already made to the Hounslow, to make Hounslow cleaner and more tidy. And I look forward to hearing the committee's reflections and recommendations. The corporate plan outlines the importance of creating a cleaner Hounslow, specifically one that is clean and litter-free, reflective of the pride people have in their communities, and to address this by actively combating fly tipping, graffiti, and all those other nasty things, but also supporting recycling and making more progress with our recycling activities. We've set many key priorities around this ambition, including reducing fly tipping by 25%, encouraging more recycling and leading towards a 50% target that we've got in a little time, and expanding the special waste service, which looks to find and deal with those who consistently are fly tipping. The report outlines the progress on tackling litter and detritus, reducing fly tipping, increasing recycling and delivery of recycling projects, improving footways and roads, improving engagement with residents and building civic pride, reducing the confusion residents experience when reporting issues. The report also shows how Hounslow is becoming cleaner with improving cleanliness with litter scores by sort of national standards, being in an acceptable position with the litter at the 10-year high with a rating of 98%. Similarly, detritus scores, which have been not so good, they're the highest they've ever been in Hounslow now, with an average score of 94%, and actions to improve the removal of weeds in the borough. Actions to reduce litter thrown, actions taken to reduce the incidence of fly tipping. We've already achieved something like a 20% reduction in 2022-23. And we're trying to take that further. Enforcement against fly tipping has improved and increased since the induction of the special waste service. And legacy fly tipping hotspots are cleaner as a result. Encouraging more people to recycle more of their waste and increasing household recycling rates. Investing in spaces, including £5 million investment in parks and a £2 million footway pledge, which will be coming to fruition shortly. Ensure robust contract management processes are in place. We've got a 25-year PFI deal with Hounslow Highways, which needs very active management. Noting improvements to date, we do recognise that members and residents' expectations have increased, and we need to strive for the most impactful interventions and expose the service to greater scrutiny to deliver not only improvements in performance, but also address the underlying concerns and perceptions that Hounslow is not clean enough. We all think that. We are commencing the development of transformative plans that will be examining how services can be transformed to deliver the ambitions of the borough, and specifically a cleaner Hounslow. I ask the committee to consider the contents of this report and provide input on any improvements, alternative actions or options it considers appropriate to achieve a cleaner Hounslow by 2026. Any options and actions it considers will support the development of civic pride within the borough. Any areas of further analysis it will recommend to be explored. Further insight into residents' views and perceptions of cleanliness in the borough and what actions it would recommend to address those. Finally, how it would like to be kept appraised of progress. I see that you gave the policeman 12 months bail before coming back in a year, and I look forward to the discussion and any questions that you've got.
Thank you for that, Councillor. On to really the Cabinet, on to the committee now to ask questions on the report that you've just heard from our guest here. So this is really just a clarification on the wider discussion. We'll follow shortly. Councillor Perez-Otto.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, but just want to start with weed removal, which you know is a concern for us. I think we talked about how we see, because of we're not using pesticide killer as much, the workers themselves are doing a lot of hard work. And we see that when we see them out doing the job. So we just want to know how we're providing that support for the members of staff who are out and doing that very physical labor to take care of the weed problem.
Are you talking about the people who collect the stuff?
Or what do they use?
The operatives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the operatives who are using
The hose.
the hose.
So I mean, first thing is saying in terms of the recycling activity and the waste, we've got. I always can't believe it when I read it. The success in collecting recycling and waste is 99.98% of what is put before them is collected correctly. It's a team that is very well motivated and very much respected, as was shown in particular during the pandemic. Paramedics are different things. I think these two have got something.
Shall I come in? So Hounslow Highways have very strong staff welfare controls in place and procedures around that. We know that that's a tough task. Manual removal is much more strenuous. It's not for everybody. We also know that, but it's really important that when Hounslow Highways deploy staff, they're well trained. They have the equipment. You'll see most of those operatives out with pretty new equipment when they're doing sort of weed removal. That's really important because sharp equipment makes the job easier. We are looking at alternatives. We're very conscious that in removing sort of the use of glyphosate, that has positive environmental benefits, but at the same time, that we know there is an alternative solution, and we know that industry is looking at those options, and we're involved with a number of sort of processes around that. But staff welfare is very important. Very strong health and safety controls in place as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. One is I saw we expanded the pilot program for the fly tipping to entire borough, but we only have 4 enforcement officers for the entire borough. Do you think it is enough to cover everywhere?
So just to clarify that on Councillor Tax, so we've got 4 at the moment, but the ambition in the corporate plan is to extend that across the entire borough. So at the moment we deploy the special waste service, which you're right is 4 colleagues, to very targeted hotspots to undertake their work, and that's why it's an ambition in the corporate plan. In addition to that, there is work ongoing as part of the One Hounslow delivery plan around how we can look at safer communities, but specifically a review on enforcement activity right across the organisation.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
The second question was like we have hotspots for fly tipping. Yes, Fix My Street is great. You report it, it gets cleared. But these specific hotspots, one report is cleared, the next day there is another fly tip at the same place. What do we do about that, and what is in plan for that?
I think that the whole point of starting the special waste services we did a couple of years ago was to target those places that are very bad for fly tipping. And the first place that I went there myself with the guys when this started, and we went through about 90 bags on one day going down Kingsley Road in Hounslow, and I think we found 6 that had enough evidence to make a fine for. So the first task of special waste service was to fix Kingsley Road. If you go down Kingsley Road now, there is no fly tipping, or not no, but there's usually one where there were once 90, in my experience. And we've had, that's an extreme place, but we have similar, I've seen people out in Chiswick. In Chiswick, quite a lot of them are commercial people who are fly tipping by using the public bins. And this is difficult to get this under control, but it's a really big and important priority for keeping the place clean and getting the place clean. I think, I mean, the other thing that is in my mind is if I go down Chiswick, there are 50 bags there, but they say Serco or First Mile or something like that. And I think I want to get better at managing these commercial providers and get them to move those out of the way and collect them quickly. We had something similar in Brentford, which we have, when Greg's started, there were loads of bags going out there. Now we've got that under control. But it's very much a sort of knife and fork job. You have to look at each place and find the right answer to it. And that's what the Special Waste Service are the experts on.
Councillor Sharma, please.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the operatives with regards to the weeding, are we at full capacity for staff?
Yeah, so under the contract with Hounslow Highways, there are 65 operatives deployed on a normal basis. That is uplifted seasonally as part of the PFI, and built into the contract is an extra 20 operatives around leafing. What we've looked at this year, learning from the experience last year around weed removal, but other aspects of cleansing as well during the summer. We've tested a new approach this year with increased resources. So overall, the total resource that Hounslow Highways have been operating to is 105 during the summer, but that will reduce back to 85 during the autumn and winter month when we're removing leaves and autumn debris. But the resource does fluctuate. We do find that there is, particularly around the weed work, there is a turnover of staff. But Hounslow Highways have been looking at ways that they can keep those staff on for a longer period of time, and therefore sort of build up that strong relationship with the operatives, such that they're valued and they'd like to stay. And we are seeing that turnover of staff reduce. That's a constant sort of effort, really. But actually, at various times, they're running at full strength.
Thank you. Councillor Mullock, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight on Heston West Ward especially, there's a hotspot for the fly tipping. I have put it in the Fix My Street. That particular area is from Brisbane Road is one side, the Norman Crescent State on the other side. And we had a green small patch area which leads from there to A4, a walkway. We've got a farm there. I have visited the other day. I've seen at least 6-7 mattresses there. There's a lot of fly tipping, some in the farm, some on the other side. I have reported, I don't know if it's clear or not, this is a definitely hot spot.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll pick that up and we'll investigate that through the Special Waste Service and the Community Enforcement Team. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, sure.
Okay, the second question I would like to ask is, I know we had a MoMA. There are some areas, especially on Brisbane Road, we have quite a few small roads off. There has not been no weeds and no grass has been cut. And a lot of the residents have been complaining to me. The only reason, what I'm getting the answer is, some area are responsible highways, The other areas are responsible someone else. My residents are only interested and they want to get the job done. But we keep getting excuses on the thing. Oh, sorry, it's not our side. That's belong to highway, and that's belong to someone else, and they are really concerned.
Yeah, we're concerned about that as well, and you certainly do see differing standards between sort of council owned and run spaces, and obviously there are a plethora of other owners of land out there, and we do see differing standards between how they operate and how our services operate on the council land. When we spot problems and when we're alerted to problems through Fix My Street, we do have officers. There's a team of 8 ward improvement officers, and we do charge those officers with engaging with as many of these property owners as possible. They tend not to be small property owners. They tend to be sort of landlords of communal flats and places like that. But we'll certainly, I take note of what you've stated here, and we'll certainly inspect that area.
Thank you. And if I could just pass it to Richard Foote now, please. Thank you.
We've got a specific problem in Hamworth that 3 of the major roads in Hamworth or 2 of the 3 are owned and operated by TfL. The main problem area is the A316, which has all of the slip roads have not been cleaned or cleared of trees overgrowing, weeds overgrowing in over a year. We just don't get any response from TfL at all, either in action or even in saying, yes, we're aware of it or we do something. I don't know whether we can get into them more. The other thing that's noticeable, very noticeable, if you're traveling from London, you will find that the A316 in Richmond, that is in Richmond, is clean until you get to the roundabout, which puts you in Hounslow. That's when we've got all the rubbish. Now, why they should be cleaning Richmond's roads, TfL roads, and not Hounslow's puzzles me, but it's something that ought to be really looked into.
Yeah, I mean, we've put quite a lot of effort into the 316. In particular, there's a roundabout that you'll know what it is that has lots of graffiti and other problems on it.
That's almost in Sunbury.
Yeah, but it's not.
The real main problem is the 3/4 of the 316 is in Hamworth.
And in fact, the cleaning of the A3 of the TfL roads is the council's, and therefore it's Hounslow Highways. Sometimes it's very it is. Sometimes it's very difficult because they're fast roads and we can't get access in a safe way to some of the slipways. But we must find an answer to that, and we will certainly look to do that.
Well, this is over a year.
Wayne is probably
like this.
So I think that applies to most of the TfL roads in the borough. The strategic network, that most of them are faster roads. Hounslow Highways are charged with cleaning those roads. We see a better standard on footway than the carriageways, and slip roads are a very sort of specific problem. I think what we saw over the last couple of years, and we need to work on a solution to this, and we need to work with TfL to find a solution to this. Over the last 2.5 years, we had a program of road closures. They take place very late at night, and that enables those slip roads to be closed, cleansed, and then reopened. And then that operation is done in a very safe way. This year, there's been a stop on those road closures. And that subsequently left us in a position where Hounslow Highways are unable to clear that for health and safety reasons. But we are working with TfL to see if there's an alternative method. We've not arrived at that yet, but we do know the challenge.
I shall watch with I shall watch carefully.
I'd also observe that TfL or their contractors are quite like they do mow the verges at times, but they never clean the litter before they do that. I was out at the weekend in Cranford.
Sorry, you're talking about TfL on their slip roads.
Yeah, no.
They haven't cut the grass or the bushes in over a year.
Their contractors do. I was out at the weekend on the A3.
Well, they might be doing it in your area. They're not doing it in my
No,
area.
it was in Cranford, and on the A315. And the problem there was that with every Coke can that had been left there was now 5,000 bits of a Coke can when you try and do the litter picking. So that's another problem. But TfL have the responsibility for the mowing, and they do it from time to time.
Not in Hamworth, sorry, just not in Hamworth.
Thank you for that. Look, so clearly there's a bit of work to be done there, and we do need to speak to, and Wayne sort of alluded to it, that we just need to speak to TfL a little bit more and engage and get that sort of all done. Thank you for that. Can I just move to Councillor Biddulph, please?
Thank you very much. Picking up on that point, TfL is very good at mowing a verge at 2 o'clock in the morning when it disturbs people. It does that regularly, but it doesn't seem to have an understanding of regular maintenance because, like you, we have the same things arising seasonally. Why haven't they done it? And we ask, and we don't necessarily get a reaction. So a lot more work needs to be done with TfL. I'd like to endorse the comment, I think it was Marina who made it, about motivation of people who are clearing the weeds. What a hard job that is. And extend that to the people who clean our streets, because they work day in, day out. It's a phenomenal job that they do. Thank you very much for 2 more people on Chiswick High Road, because we really do need it. And the team is great, and I enjoy having a word with them whenever I see them out. We used to have a league table of fly tipping showing in ward order, because I remember that Turnham Green Ward, as it was the 3rd worst and then the 2nd worst, or the other way round. It would be quite useful to have that when you come back. It's 7 months, actually, not 12. Bad luck. The commercial waste system I've been promoting quite heavily, and I really think it's good, and we should all be promoting it. It picks up on your point, Guy, about stepping over Veolia and First Mile Sacks or whatever it happens to be, because your commercial waste or Hounslow Highways commercial service is clearing it during the day, which means that businesses can put their sacks out for a set time rather than leave them out overnight, so we don't have to step over them going out for supper. Having said that, there are areas in Chiswick Gunnersbury Ward, and I don't know if it applies to other wards, where litter has never been so bad. And we really need to pick up on that. The leader, Shantanu Rajawat, announced that he was going to introduce a litter pick after the waste and recycling collections, the weekly collections.
Just a question, please, Councillor.
Yeah. Is he going to do that? When is he going to do that? I've asked him. It was going to be May this year, and now we haven't got it yet. There are other ways, I think, that we need to, I know you're itching to answer that point. There is another aspect to this. The fortnightly service isn't working. The fortnightly, whether it's a litter pick or whether it's a street sweep, that isn't working. So in some roads, they never see somebody, and so it's building up. And then one other point, we're grade D for detritus most of the time and grade C for litter, just so you know, in certain parts of Chiswick Gunnersbury Ward. After festivals, what can we do about festival organisers? We've got them in several wards. We've just had a weekend in Gunnersbury, and they've pledged to do a litter pick afterwards. But Gunnersbury Avenue and the Gunnersbury Park Garden Estate was strewn the next morning on both days. Festival organisers really must have an obligation to clear up after themselves. It shouldn't be our responsibility to pick up after them. They know it. It's been in the checklist since 2019, since 2018 when I submitted my first report, and they're just not picking up on it. So can we have some influence on festival organisers, please?
Okay, well, festivals, I completely agree with you. Funnily enough, we had Junction 2 in Brentford the other day, didn't have any problems. And it has to do with the responsibility of the organiser and the responsibility of the council in making sure. And I can remember in Gunnersbury, when it was in my ward, I remember going out there one day when whatever it was called was on, and there was nobody doing it. And the next year, we had an army of people picking it up. I'm not saying it wasn't perfect, because these things never are, but generally speaking, there wasn't much mess. So that's one thing. What was the other thing you mentioned?
The collection after waste and recycling, weekly collections that Shantanu promised.
Well, we've always had weekly collection of recycling.
There's a litter pick afterwards, a litter pick after the collections, which Councillor Rajawat said he would introduce in May 2022.
We have, as you probably realise, we've got severe financial concerns to deal with. And the three of us have been working over the last few months trying to find the most economical way of improving that without doubling the cost of the service, because we can't do that. So we'll be coming back to Cabinet and the Council probably in the start of 2024 with a comprehensive proposal about how we're going to do that and how we're going to be able to afford it.
And then the other one was the fortnightly service, which is meant to happen on all roads. Part of it, I think, if I could just explain the question.
Report to me any roads that aren't done, because my experience, I mean, I went out in Chiswick the other week with somebody said, they never do the waste, they never do any. So I went down various roads in Bedford Park. I couldn't find any litter at all. There were weeds, but there wasn't any litter. So my experience is they do a good job at picking up litter. They don't do a very good job of detritus and weeds and things like that.
And that was my point. I think that this fortnightly sweep,
just really
as it's
quickly,
as it's described, yes, it's described as a sweep, and actually it's a litter pick more than it is a sweep. So detritus remains, and that's what people are bothered by. They think their roads haven't been done because they're still full of detritus.
So one thing we've reintroduced really, because it fell away during the pandemic, is what we call deep cleans, where we get, because the problem with detritus in cars which are roads which are full of cars, it's almost impossible to clean them because the cars are in the way. So we've done a number of roads, sometimes not perfectly, but generally speaking very well around the borough, and we'll be doing more of that via Hounslow Highways as we go on.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. We're just pressed for time now, so we do need to go to discussion. Of course, we can raise some questions. Just a couple from me, really, as we go through it. One thing for me is Spaceway. So we do have that here. At the moment, there's a bit of a lumbering thing that we do need to go online and sort of register our vehicles, and then we can of course take those vehicles in and use them. Can we sort of take that away to encourage more of the elderly, perhaps, who don't have sort of phones or laptops to just drive in? I do know that this was something that was sort of done over the sort of COVID periods, but can we kind of take that away? And maybe when you introduce residents with, cycles or even cargo bikes to sort of come in and throw the rubbish away. Thank you.
So I think the booking system, in one sense, has been extremely useful. It certainly controlled the crowds during the pandemic. it is useful to understand where that waste is generated from, and that does help us then sort of engage with those residents both on site and with sort of follow-up information. But we do understand that can be inconvenient for some, and if it's you know, if there isn't a slot available, we do find that there's pretty good availability across the week. We are, however, looking at how we can potentially, and we'll take note of your comment, Chair, because we're not only looking about that access to spaceway, but is there an opportunity to provide some kind of service provision in wards such that we can help residents that way as well. But we need to explore that as part of the range of measures that we'll consider.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Just one sort of thing again from myself here as well. We want to encourage people to recycle, and it seems that we sort of stop and we sort of almost there's kind of an invisible blockage. Is there any way that we can sort of encourage more and more residents to actually just come and recycle their goods or indeed the bins?
What people in houses have every incentive that we can find, and generally speaking, our recycling in houses is pretty good. It has been poor in blocks of flats, and over the last couple of years, we've improved, not all of them, but we're going around blocks of flats, putting in new facilities, and in particular putting in food recycling. And food recycling is really important because A, it's very polluting, and B, it costs a lot of money. Whereas it costs a lot of money if you put food in your black bag rather than in food. It costs about £100 a tonne more.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick question. This might not go down too well. How do we promote civic pride with our residents? Now, back in the day, my nan would sweep out the front. She would clean her door. It would be presentable. I myself, I will sweep. I will hoe my edge. I will hoe by where I park my car because it annoys me because I can't get it straight out the front. So I will do that. Now, I know that there are certain members of society that are unable to do that. But how can we promote this more to be more neighbourly, to have more pride?
Well, that's a tough one. I can remember when I was a new councillor, I noticed there was a restaurant in Brentford High Street. The guy, he opened up the windows at the front and he swept out the restaurant onto the pavement. I said, oh, you should be picking that up. Oh, it's the council's problem, not mine. And I'm sorry to say that is the most common view. I mean, funnily enough, I went to Felton today and coming back, I noticed I went past a lady who was doing what you like your man, dealing with the. But I don't think we can change the view of most of the population who think that's somebody else's problem and they're not interested to do it. We can promote it, and we do try to promote it. But if anybody's got any smart ideas about how we get people to do that regularly, that will be fantastic. But I'm not sure that well, I don't know. If somebody's got some ideas that will work, we'll try them.
Yeah. So I think there is a conversation to have with our public about what determines civic pride. I think we've people of a certain age, we've all experienced sort of differences in that, and it is different for different communities as well, and we understand that. So I think it's a wider conversation to have. I know as part of the council's delivery plan, and certainly our services are linked in into that with the radical overhaul of sort of communications and engagement. I think communication campaigns are really important. We have one live at the moment, which is called No Time to Waste. That's around recycling. So again, I think it's sort of multifaceted. I think we've also got our environment champions, and Hounslow Highways have lay assessors as well who help monitor their services. But our environment champions are involved in a number of projects across the borough. But I think it is a conversation for us to have. I think local promotion is really important. And I think also promoting sort of local leaders in this space to encourage others. I think there's been some phenomenal work by the Heston Action Group and Cranford Action Group. These are really good sort of practice models, but forgive me if I've left out any others, because there are a number of residents groups across the borough who are actively engaged in the environment and building civic pride, and we want to build on that. So we welcome ideas.
So if you know anyone, councillor, we're really keen to promote those. There are examples in Chiswick of a lady who cleans an alleyway on a regular basis, and Hounslow Highways provide her with the bags and the litter picker, and she encourages that. I know there are other councillors across the borough who do that and actively support that. So, you know, we're really open to ideas and trying new things.
Thank you for that, Victoria. I'm just going to ask Mandy to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't resist, because I think it's a moment just to plug a couple of things. I mean, Wayne sort of listed an enormous amount of activities and opportunities that we promote. I do think there's a bigger campaign piece around this as well. So I think that's a takeaway from this. It was sort of probably coming. The Thriving Communities Strategy, which is currently being refreshed, I feel that this is going to be a part of that. Obviously, it's got to go through the next iteration. And the associated Thriving Communities Fund. So where, you know, community groups or neighbourhood groups are sort of looking for small amounts of money, perhaps to resource doing some of that or doing their local campaigning. There's a plug for the TCF. And at a lower level and a sort of neighbourhood level, where we've got people who are doing these things, we also have our community awards. So another way of promoting it is really just enabling those people who are doing great stuff to be part of the community awards as well.
I'll just say one other thing, which is there's a thing about having a good example. And I think of Kingsley Road. Everybody dumped in Kingsley Road. Nobody does now. And that's not because, it's partly because a lot of people were fined and generally, but I think people were in the habit of it, and they thought, well, it doesn't matter, everybody else does it, so I'll do the same. And I think that one of the things that would be my ambition is to get it so that we've got better role models for people to not make a mess, but take it home. But it's an uphill struggle.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mullock, please.
Yeah, just for my knowledge as well, when we report and fix my street, within an hour, the report get closed. Number one. Secondly, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. But quite a few my residents have contacted me. The reason why the travelers, second time they have got into the Cranford Park, is there any way, why can't we lock the doors up? But they're going through those doors that we got there. So that way they do not have access. No, the second time it happened.
So thanks, councillor. I think we're moving into a different sphere around travellers. And if it's helpful, Chair, we can give you an update on that separately about the process that we need to go through with travellers. They have particular rights, and there's a particular way in which we go through that. But we'll pick that up, and I'll make sure there's a brief to the overview and scrutiny committee on that.
No, that's
I think
great.
that's
Thank
a
you.
different
Yeah, that's
area
fine.
of responsibility.
Sorry, I wasn't aware of asked this question.
Yeah, absolutely, it's fine. And I think there was a council question on travellers, so we'll be able to share that as well.
Thank you for that, Victoria. Just really a quick one from me, and I'll catch up with you, Councillor Bidoff. Councillor, okay, yep. community engagement, to keep your area clear, to keep your home clear, or whatever. Do we do that?
Very much so, Councillor. I think behaviour and lifestyle change is absolutely sort of critical for us to understand. Our campaigns are built on sort of the principles of behavioural change science. I won't go into all of the details around that, but it does underpin all of our communications campaigns. And I think there's some opportunities in the future as Mandy and ourselves have set out around community engagement.
Thank you for that. Councillor Biddle, please.
Thank you very much. Just picking up on points that have been made, plus a couple of new ones. No More May hasn't been mentioned, and I do think we need a bit of a report on what we'll do next year, and I hope it will be very different indeed. I know it ties in with weeds, but it is a separate issue. And linked to that, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the inventor of Foam Stream, which is I know I've raised it with you, Guy, an alternative to hand picking weeds. He wants to do a demo. That's what he would like to do, because it isn't another option. I know what you said is that the manpower is equal to it, but perhaps it would be more effective potentially. One of the things I liked in the report, which hasn't come up, picks up on Marina's point about clearing up outside. Guilty as charged. I do not do the outside of my house, back or front, regularly at all. I do it from time to time, and I'm depressed when 2 weeks later it's come back to the same extent as it was. So I've forgotten what you called it in here, but it was something like closing the gap, filling those little gaps between paving stones and concrete or whatever it is, so that you don't get the grow back. That would be very helpful in some places. Just picking up as well on
very quickly,
on blocks of flats, because I think there's a difference between blocks of flats that we have and privately owned blocks. One of the frustrations at privately owned blocks in Chiswick is that they have been built with a certain space for waste that is out of touch with what we need now. So they can't get enough bins in there, and automatically they're sending something that we know we can recycle to waste. I don't know how we overcome that. And for the future, I think planning applications have to have fixed amounts of space, obviously hoping that it'll be reduced, but nevertheless catering for now. But it's depressing for people who live in the private blocks that they can't recycle to the extent that they want to.
I'd say a couple of things about some of those things. The first is that with private, I mean, I remember I met with one of the people in Chiswick Gunnersbury, and there were a bunch of flats that didn't have anything, and there didn't appear to be a way of doing it. We found a way of doing it, and it usually is a knife and fork thing. The other thing is, there's one, for example, down by Kew Bridge, which was a new block built with no. It actually had facilities, but you couldn't get to them because they made the access too narrow. So we'll fix that, but we haven't fixed it yet because we have to open up the thing. Foam Stream have been around for at least 3 or 4 years. Hounslow Highways used it, and they decided at the time that it wasn't worth the hassle. We were talking to them about it last week, weren't we, Wayne? And but they're probably going to have another look at it. I think it's got its place, but it's nothing like as big a place as Mr. Foamstream believes.
That may be the case, but he would like to do a trial. He wanted to do his own road, which was lagging behind all the other roads in the part of Chiswick that he lives in. So that would have been an opportunity.
No doubt we'll talk to them.
Yes, and just to pick up on your point about blocks, a shout out to Soledad Sanhuesa and other people who come round and really try to work hard at finding a solution. But there are just some blocks where there isn't an option. And I feel we could be more creative about it, but I'm not sure how.
I agree. And one of our creative things, that I hate those purple bags on the street. And I know you're not particularly keen on the grit bins, but you don't get purple bags on the street, and you usually don't get black bags either, because they used to attract everybody else who wanted to dump.
Very quickly.
So just very quickly, I think thank you for the comments about Soledad. She's one of our ward improvement officers, and they work tirelessly with landlords and others. And just a shout for we put in place planning guidance that covers waste management for all future developments.
Councillor Bob, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, just a comment. Community involvement and education play a significant role in maintaining a tidy and pleasant living environment. Thank you.
Noted. Thanks, Councillor Butt. Yeah, and there's a lot of work that we do with schools and eco schools. So I think there's a lot of emerging consciousness in our young children and our young people about climate, the environment, and actually, when we've run things through Climate Action Week or London Climate Action Week, the schools have been heavily involved in that. And I think for COP26, when it was held in Glasgow, we were able to sort of engage with around 4,000 young people by directly dialing into their teacher, into their classroom. So I think absolutely it's a stream of an area that we absolutely want to look into and tap into. And we do have like a small group of eco agents, so it's very similar to environment champions, but for younger people. And I think if we were to look at our children and young persons plan, you'll see that the environment is as important to them as it is to us as adults.
Thank you all for that. Again, just pressing for time, and we'll just go through some of the recommendations that we've discussed already soon. Here we go. So, yes, the recommendation for tonight on this topic is that we do note the progress. It's fantastic to see that there's really good progress being made. Deeper engagement with TfL, I think this was, and others who maintain the clean space as well. So whether that's third parties as well. Considering ways to improve Safeway and local alternatives, great. And just really just on the last point there, just maximising engagement with community groups and schools to promote cleanliness within the borough. Do you have a seconder? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tack. And just really on the vote, unless anybody wants to go, I think it's really good. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all. That's all done. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just only a little question. I did ask this question earlier. I didn't get the response. Fix My Street. As soon as we report it, it get closed within an hour. And the problem is not resolved for at least for 2-3 days. Is there any way we can change that system, please?
So Fix My Street has been very popular since it was implemented. What it does is it gives us a very sort of clear audit trail around reports and what happens to those reports. What we often find when we hear this feedback, and I'll have to speak to you in more detail, Councillor, is we sometimes find that those jobs which are closed very quickly, yes, sometimes they've been addressed, but sometimes they're a problem that is outside of Hounslow Highway's responsibilities. But we do painstakingly go through the list of reports that come from residents and councillors. And we do monitor very closely the quality of responses. But I'll certainly speak to you about the experiences of your constituents. But it is a very strong system, and actually we've had calls for expanding that. And actually the report sort of mentions whether it's an option for reporting in the entire public realm, but that's one of the proposals that we'll have to explore further.
Thank you for that, Wayne. We're just going to go for a 2-minute break. Yeah. Well, we can have the session even between a break. I'm more than happy for Councillor Mullock to talk to Wayne and just really sort of get through the nitty-gritty of that.
No.
Just so, again, just for pressing for time, we do need to move on. But we'll have a 2-minute break now. Yeah. And sorry, my apologies. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I only apologise. Thank you so much for all of you. Thank you, Councillor. But you're more than happy to stay, or you can go as well. And do come back. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. Are we sort of all here now? Are we? Yeah. Just waiting for Peter there. Thank you all. I hope you all had a slight refresher. Just moving on to agenda item number 5 now. So this is the delivery plan update. We now move on to the first of our shorter items tonight, the Monitoring Office Council's delivery plan. Unfortunately, Andrew Clark, Interim Executive Director of Finance and Resources, unwell, so instead we welcome Mandy Skinner, Chief Executive, who will respond to any questions we may have. Assistant Chief Executive, who will respond to any questions we may have. For nearly a year now, the delivery plan has come to OSC at regular points throughout the year. It will continue to do so throughout this municipal year and gives the committee an opportunity to ask questions to the council transformation work. This time we have detailed updates on activity across 4 portfolios of work focused on people, place, capital and digital. OSC is asked to note the addition of digital within the delivery plan and to scrutinise progress across the 4 portfolios of work. Before we open the matter up to committee, Mandy, is there anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Chair. Only really to point out, as you've indicated, you've got the full suite now against the delivery plan, all four portfolios. So you will see in future, again, the whole breadth of all the activity. It's all documented, it's all RAG rated, as you'll see. So actually a really good achievement that we've got everything now in one place, 4 portfolios. I think this comes to your committee at least twice a year. I think one of the other things to note is really the interface between these portfolios as well. So obviously you will see the read across between the capital and the place activity, and similarly see a lot of the reference to digital within the people portfolio. But hopefully you'll find that sort of a relatively easy read, and happy to take questions. Obviously, I'm not Andrew, so it might be that I have to take some things away, and we'll get written replies to you as soon as possible.
Thank you for that, Mandy. Is there anything from the committee on the report, please? Councillor Biddulph.
Thank you. We're behind, of course, because it was a report that went to wherever it went in July, so it doesn't bring us up to date, and some of the things in July have obviously been done. I'm concerned about the points in red, inevitably. Hamworth Park House has been trying to get that fixed for years and years and years, and it seems that there's another delay. I don't know what can be done about that. I'm a great fan of it being improved, and the speedier the better. But I'm also concerned about, I'm sorry to bring this up with housing in the room, but well, children's services is in red as well, and community enforcement and regulatory services improvement is in red. Could we have a bit more of an update on why things are in red, and all the things that are in red? And I didn't quite understand why HIPS and housing ASB were grey. There wasn't a note for grey.
So starting with the last point, as you say, it's this is Q1, so it's a couple of months behind now. The HIPS line in this report, in the digital report, is about the implementation of the HClick business system. So at that point in time, it was grey because it was just starting up. It may well be that Modesta might want to sort of either on this or the next item give you an update. But at that point, it was because it was just getting started. And there's definitely good news, I know, in terms of the progress of that system. In terms of some of the others that you referenced, sorry, Councillor Biddulph, my fingers weren't fast enough to get to the right places. I suppose if everything was green, there'd be some questions then. The majority of things that are red are often on time. Yes, there can be slippage with things, and if it is a IT business system, that can be the case, and if it's a capital delivery program, that can be the case too. I think in future, what will be helpful actually is we'll drag out into the main report, into the covering report, just highlight the reds and be more specific about why it is so. But for the most, as I was going through, it was, for example, on the regulatory service that you highlight, it's a business system. At that point, it was red. There is progress. And on any of the reds, again, very happy that we do an update and that get round to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else for Mandy? No. So with that, we do note the delivery plan. So thank you for that, Mandy. I think there's certainly good things that are coming into the digital world there in the report. So that's very, very pleasing to see that. If committee is okay, if the panel's okay, we do move on to the next stage. I think that's brilliant. So thank you. Thank you for that. So we do move on to agenda item number item 6. So this is Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel update on recommendations. Each year, 3 scrutiny panels undertake deep dives into specific issues. Those deep dives include in our scrutiny annual report and are important opportunities for scrutiny to play a role in policy development. OSC proper has rightly been keen to understand the impacts of these recommendations, have in terms both or whether or not recommendations are accepted and what impacts happens as a result of the scrutiny panel's contributions. This month, we are looking back at the recommendations made by the Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel in 2021-22 and 2022-23, when they were chaired by Councillor Cornwall Chowdhury, looking at homelessness, and Afzal Kiani looking at repairs, respectively. Several members of this committee sat on those 2 panels and will, I'm sure, be keen to understand what has come to pass in recommendations were shared with Cabinet members. We are joined this evening by Councillor Sue Sampson, Cabinet Member of Housing Management and Homelessness, and Modessa Uncha, Director of Housing, and Ben Tomlinson, Head of Housing Planning and Resources. So we are asked to note the progress made against both deep dives. Councillor Sampson, is there anything you would like to say before I open the discussion up to the committee?
Yes, Chair, there is. I would just like to thank the committee for doing the deep dive, the ones that you've done, and the one that I inherited, the 2021-22, because it's given us some real pointers and direction of what really needs to be addressed. And that's what we've done. So we've got some slides to show you today that will give you more of an understanding on all the points that have been identified and how far we've got with them. So I'm happy, we're happy to take you through those.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
If I can speak to the slides, Chair, they would have been part of everyone's pack. I don't know if we've got the technology to display them on the screen, but I can very briefly give a bit of the context and the feedback line by line to the stuff. So essentially, this should be in everybody's virtual pack. You would have seen these slides. I don't want to reproduce it, just reading out what's on screen. But to give a bit more of the context, so 2021 was obviously during the pandemic. The homelessness service saw literally between 2 and 3 times increase in demand during the pandemic. Although rough sleeping, street homelessness was effectively solved overnight under the Everyone In policy. There was a massive increased demand on the service. So the feedback from Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel colleagues came at a very opportune moment for us at a time when the attention of the country was very much on other things. So it was very valuable feedback, and we took all of it on board and acted rapidly to address most of the points that were raised. So firstly, there was a point made about telling people who are on the housing register what their expected waiting time is. We've completed that. We provided that information based on the average amount of time people currently on the waiting list have been waiting. The only thing to draw your attention to on that point is it's going up. So the figures here, both the numbers on the waiting list and the expected waiting times, particularly for larger properties, are all increasing. The second point was probably the most difficult one to speak to. We weren't able to produce a newsletter for residents on the housing letter, and that's purely and simply out of practical considerations for the type of allocations policy that we have. It's a very passive system. All the work's undertaken by officers. Previously, we'd used a choice-based letting system, which is the prevalent form of lettings for people on the waiting list that requires active participation of households on the waiting list. That, I think, lends itself to a newsletter approach, and we're not ruling that out in the future. It may be appropriate to introduce it, but as it stands, it wasn't, because there's not a lot of interaction required by households on the waiting list. So just to explain, that's why we didn't do that. Review the housing application process. Although it's a statutory process and certain categories of people are given priority preference under the legislation, we have an up-to-date allocations policy. It's constantly reviewed in lines of findings, regulatory guidance, etc., and the needs of what we perceive to be the needs of residents in the borough. But that's an ongoing process. There is a review of all the housing policies in place since the change of leadership in the department that you'll be aware of, and we're likely to come to that prioritised in due course. But at the moment, it's been judged to be adequate to the task. So similarly related to that, void standards in terms of what the fitting out of the properties are at the point of us letting them, that's adequate at the moment. But it is part of a wider review process that we're looking into to ensure that we can let voids to an acceptable standard for residents, and also as quickly as possible to meet their housing needs as fast as possible. So a point on equalities data, it's a very sensitive issue. The objective is really to collect it once and not have to repeatedly ask people for it. There's an understandable reluctance across many equalities groups to in fact give out equalities information for a whole variety of social and historical reasons. It's been used to people, there's a perception it's been used against people, or it can actually sort of work against you if you give up that information. We're working to dispel those kind of myths, the legacy of a different era, but people understandably are still reluctant to give us that information. We aim to collect it once, and it's really tied into new computer systems. But to reassure you, we do collect it at the moment, and we do analyse a lot of our performance outcomes across the equalities categories to make sure that we're treating people not just equally but fairly, so that everybody's got an equal chance under our policies. Redesign the homeless service telephone system. This was really of its era during the pandemic. At the time, there was no physical presence in Hounslow House. All queries were dealt with over the phone. There's a massive increase in demand, and we were using an older phone system in the council, so that has been resolved. That's been dealt with. We now migrated to a new phone system. Looking to the future, it'll be very much around internet connectivity, apps, dare I say, even things such as AI. A lot of that will be enabled by the new system that we're migrating to for housing. So watch this space, but the telephone system's been solved for now. Benchmarking the homeless journey against peers, that's something that we do continuously. Obviously, we've got peer relationships with other London authorities, both in West London through the West London Alliance and London councils across the whole capital. We really sort of go to them and make sure that we're not just with the pack, but kind of anticipating what's coming in the future. And there's a joint London response to that, really, both in terms of new regulatory regimes in social housing and constantly changing homeless legislation. So we do that. It's factored into things, but again, we're very much dependent on our new ICT systems coming online in order to enable better modes of working through that. Wider access, housing access to key systems. Again, I think this was of its time. Remote working, some issues in the early days with kind of gaining access to system. I believe those have largely been resolved in terms of the way the original query was raised. But as Mandy just spoke to, there are other systems that we're in the process of upgrading. I won't steal Modesta's thunder by announcing some good news there. But well, we are going live with the new H-Click homelessness system tomorrow, which will mean that we have a vastly improved and effective means of collecting our homeless data in the borough and reporting it to our DLUC colleagues. So that's advantageous. It raises the awareness of the homeless and housing pressures in the borough, and ensures that we receive adequate funding to deal with them. So good news in that regard. Diversity inclusion training for staff, well completed, but it's always an ongoing task. So staff are assigned inclusion diversity training as part of their induction. It's a mandatory requirement that they complete it in order to pass the probation. There are refresher courses online because, of course, you're never fully completely trained. It requires refreshing in line with all the latest policy developments. So that's been dealt with. Staffing levels, you'll be aware that there was a restructure in the tenancy side of housing management last year and the year before. The homeless service resourcing levels have been reviewed since Modesta and other new senior officers have taken up post. So we're now adequate to the task of running the homeless department. A lot of work's been done to clear backlogs that develop within the service. The issue being that when we came out of the pandemic and transitioned away from remote working, we were facing the largest demand on the homeless service in several years because of the cost of living crisis, because a huge number of residents in the borough who previously enjoyed secure employment through Heathrow Airport fell into benefits because of the economic crisis and issues with the aviation industry. So we've had to review staffing levels, but they are at the moment believed to be adequate. That was then takes us on to the second review, 22-23, when the panel looked at the repairs service. Again, this has got to be seen in context of Arab Ishak, who's tragically died from damp and mold around that time. And there's a real drive to address not just the condition of people's buildings, but also the state in which tenants were living in their homes. So that's really sort of forced a change of perspective and shift in focus of the repair service, not just away from material defects in the buildings. Obviously and clearly, safety, gas safety, electrical, fire remains our number one priority. And hand on heart, we are very good at doing that. We make sure that it's any concerns escalated and dealt with in a double quick time. But there's now an increasing focus on also the quality of people's homes, and that's informed some of these. So reviewing the role, use, oversight of contractors, that's mainly our colleagues in Lambton Services. There are new contract client management arrangements in place that are robust. The management agreement was robust in the first place, but we've taken additional steps to make sure that they're held to account in a collegiate cooperative way. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of the council. It's not the same as a usual client provider relationship. We're arm's length. I can speed up, Chair, if you're concerned for time. So implementing representative sample feedback, there are new regulations in place. We do that. There'll be an annual tenant survey now, whereas before we ran it on a 2-yearly basis. Key performance indicators, you can see those, that they've all been adjusted. Again, increasing emphasis on not just the materials of the building, but also the quality of people's homes, damp and mold in particular being monitored. Address repairs booking process issues. Again, we've looked at that. Technology is a huge enabler. We'll be making moves in the future, but we really need the new ICT solutions to come on before we can capitalize on that and deliver a 21st century housing service. And finally, review the council's void processes, procedures. We did get a lot of voids during the pandemic. It was in fact illegal to let voids that weren't an emergency at one point. That caused us to develop a bit of a glut of properties. However, we're now progressing through those, clearing them down, and that's in conjunction with a review of the overall voids process so that we can improve turnaround times and meet the residents' housing needs as quickly as possible. So in conclusion, big thanks to the Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel for 2 very opportune deep dive investigations into 2 critical areas of our work. I think I speak on behalf of colleagues when I say we're very appreciative of the advice that we get from the Scrutiny Panel and Committee, and welcome their feedback at all times. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Ben. That's full of passion right there. So thank you so much for that. It is just being noted, so we're not going to sort of go into that. So thank you so much for that. Thank all the colleagues within the housing team as well. Okay, Councillor Biddle. Yeah, she has something. Go on. Yeah.
Can we not just ask a few questions since
Yeah.
we've got the senior team
Very
here?
quickly, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We are waiting for a full update on voids. I think you were going to come with it at this meeting, not just a summary like that. So you made that commitment in Borough Council the other day. So if you could give a bit more detail about voids, numbers, changes in numbers, for example.
I think there's something planned for November. Is it your next meeting? We're coming in full with the voids item. It wasn't for this meeting.
No, I did. Sorry, I did say Borough Council to give an update regarding voids.
Yeah.
Can talk about the process improvement,
We-
not numbers.
We can certainly talk about the process, councillor, in terms of numbers. So we'd traditionally void times, the targets are 10 days for minor voids that are just a routine void. So there'd be 10 days for repairs, and actually we'd run the letting concurrent to that. For more complex voids where they perhaps hadn't seen maintenance for a long period of time because of access issues, it should take around 20 days. So one of the issues during the pandemic, of course, were access issues. So whereas we would typically seen a lot of the majority of our voids would be minor voids, and we'd be turning around them in 10 days because the pandemic prevented us from having access to people's homes. It pushed a lot of voids into the voids, the major voids category, which sort of had a twofold effect. We got more voids spending longer in our repairs process, and it also took us longer to let, because when they're a major void, there's a lot of works going on and we can't actually start the lettings process until it's been complete. So I think on a whole, there was a significant increase in the average void time during the pandemic. It may have sort of it increased by a factor of 2 or even 3, similar to the overall numbers of voids. We didn't see any increase in voids coming in, but they did spend longer with us. And really, there's a lot of work ongoing at the moment to get precise numbers of stock, to sort of get down the numbers of stock and get some of these longer term voids, which aren't available to let at the moment, ready for letting, back out of the waiting lists and into the hands of residents in a lot of housing need, if that makes sense.
It does make perfect sense, but I think what we were hoping for is a bit more of an update about when these hundreds of homes were going to be released. What's the timetable?
I think, Modesta, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Ben. I think what I can add is that there is a lot of work going on to try and turn around all those empty properties, because as Ben explained, there is a situation that a lot of voice came through the pandemic. It's not only a Hounslow matter, it's the situation across London, and we are tackling the issue head on. We are looking at, you either have a property ready for letting or one that is under repairs. We do have weekly meeting with staff to go through all the properties that are within the system to understand what is going on, to make sure that they can be let as quickly as possible. We are bringing in 2 additional staff within the lettings team. We'll be starting next week to make sure that those things are moving. We have agreed to give us some of the work that are stuck in repairs. We have worked collaboratively with Lambton, and will be, as of tomorrow, be engaging additional contractors to help us to repair the voice, because we've realized that leaving them with Lambton means that they could stay there for longer, because we want them to focus on turning around repairs, day-to-day repair, rather than being stuck with the voice. So there are 4 local contractors that will be helping us to deal with the voice. So there is ongoing work to try and turn the situation around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one quick supplementary.
Can I just suspend standing
Oh,
orders?
yes,
please?
yes.
Thank you.
I agree, yeah. Just on,
So just seconded, moved and seconded? Yeah, thank you.
just one area which I've been exercised about for some time is the downsizing policy. And I don't know if there's been a change, but my understanding is that somebody has downsized already. They're not asked to downsize again, yet they might still be be over-occupied, as it were. What can be done about that? Have you looked at that? Is that something you're considering? Because we have a desperate need for bigger family homes. The waiting list is very, very long. If it's possible to move people down again, it would be
I
helpful.
mean, certainly, as Ben said, we are carrying out a policy review, all our policies, and the allocation policy is one of the things we'll be looking into, and that will include looking into the downsizing policy, because one of the things that we need to bring back, but obviously we have to come back to members through cabinet, is choice-based letting, because that actually, if we had choice-based letting, some of the issues we have within the voice process wouldn't be there, because you can get loads of properties out there, encourage people to bid for them, and you let them more quickly, rather than people trying to exercise choice for people.
Can I just mention, Councillor Bidoff, this is actually coming with OSC anyway later on in November, so we can certainly do a bit of a work there. I'll ever so quickly go to Councillor Sharma. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sampson and Modesta and Ben for your report. I was in last year's housing scrutiny panel, and I just wanted to say thank you for taking on board what we asked and putting it in practice. I mean, our residents will be grateful for that, because obviously we are aware that the waiting list is very long for properties. I mean, my only question would be, our residents don't really understand the process of the waiting list, and so it's like they're not getting a clear guidance as to what the actual process is, or if they are going on the waiting list for a property. It's the communication between being signed up and then not hearing anything. And also my concern, I mean, that you can take on board and take away with you and speak with me later if you wanted to. It's for the homeless team. I mean, I know that I've emailed you recently with regards to the state of some of the properties that we are sending our residents to. How can we go about ensuring that those properties are vetted and they are actually habitable for our residents to be living in?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor Sharma. So what we've done in the last, we now have a temporary accommodation manager that started last week. Up until last week, we didn't have a TA manager or TA team per se. So one of the things he's been doing is to reconcile our numbers. And then the next step is to get an inspection regime in, because I've been very clear with him that every property need to be signed up to setting the standard, which is what they should be signing on to. And we need to be doing inspection before we place people. Where we can do inspection, because if it's an emergency, we need photographs and we need to evidence it, so that it's coming on stream, because it is something that's very important. Health and safety, as Ben said, is very crucial in terms of the regulatory regime. So we cannot put people in properties that are substandard, because we are responsible. So it's something we are looking into.
Chair, can I just add a supplementary to that? Just that.
Very quickly.
Yes, just to pick up on what Marina said, because it's something I raised too. I reported to Modesta that accommodation had been completely under par, and immediately it was taken off the list. As I understand it, I may not be using the right terminology, but it's not being used until it has been brought up to standard. So it's up to us, I think, to report anybody who reports anything to us, to pass it on and raise it as a big concern. And just the final point is the bans point, which you made, which I completely agree with in terms of communication. People do get in touch with us and say, I've been told I'm in band C and I don't know what it means. It's as if you're, and I think in this report as well, we've got band B or whatever it was that you've given us today. But if you could always explain in the letters that go out what is in each band, so that people have a really realistic view of what their expectations should be, because they're always hopeful, more hopeful than the bands imply. So that information, I think, needs to be in letters that go to people or emails, you know what I mean, the communications.
Thank you for that. Again, this is going to sort of come up in November, and we can certainly go through in a bit more detail. Just for today's sort of session, I will just close it down with recommendations. So we just know the progress made. So thank you so much. It's huge amounts. You can see huge amounts of progress being made in the last 2 years. So thank you to you and your team, Councillor Sampson. And the other recommendation is Councillor Sampson's engagement is welcome. So thank you so much for being here. OSC urges executives to welcome Scrutiny's role in policy development, shared focus on serving residents well. So thank you for that. Anyone to second that? Thank you. And of course, it's just be a vote on those two recommendations. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you all for being here. And you're more than welcome to stay, or you can, of course, leave.
I just wanted to say one thing to finish the conversation with Councillor Bidoff. Our ambition is to have all our voids let by the end of the year.
Thank you for that. Okay, so just moving on to, yeah. So, sorry, thank you. Yeah, again, you're more than welcome to stay if you want to. Thank you. Okay, so we're just moving on to agenda item number 7. So this is an update from Scrutiny Panels and North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. OSC will know we have 3 scrutiny panels working across municipal year. All 3 panels have now met. I'd like to ask each panel chair to provide a short update on their work thus far. Given that Councillor Mayor's absence this evening, we have to wait until November for a more substantial update on the work of the Housing Environment Scrutiny Panel. For now, I would draw your attention to terms of reference attached to item 7 in your agenda packs, where the panel's focus on biodiversity and nature recovery is set out. If I could just ask Councillor Sharma, is also the council representative on North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As such, I'm going to ask her to provide an update on the work of that committee over the recent months.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to do the health and adult care one straight after?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Would you like me to do the health and adult care one
Yes,
straight after?
both together. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank
again,
you. So
sorry.
this is the just one. So I represented Hounslow at the first Joint Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee, chaired by Brent Council, on the 18th of July 23. During the meeting, we discussed the North West London strategy for acute beds, which has seen a decline since 2019. I raised concerns about the lack of coordination with care services, leading to delayed discharges. We agreed to explore the potential of vertical and horizontal integration to address this issue in future meetings. The committee also noted that bed occupancy rates at Chelsea and Westminster Trust exceed 100% capacity. To tackle this, the ICS strategy aims to increase space in alternative care settings to ensure a sustainable position during the challenging winter months. The committee also addressed the progress of standardising ophthalmology services, which will be delivered through high street optometrists. So far, North West London residents have generally shown their support for this new approach. However, we did bring up concerns about whether opticians are getting the right training and support. It was confirmed that this new model, planned for December, would also cover the closure of Operose, Kneeling and Hounslow. The committee convened on the 12th of September to review a proposal for consultation on palliative care, aiming to improve care at home and hospice services. During the discussion, I raised concerns about Meadow House's capacity struggles. We received assurances that this concern could be brought up for local discussion, if needed, on the borough-based partnership. The committee also acknowledged the limited progress in the development of Gordon Hospital, which has seen the closure of its inpatients' mental health services. Additionally, we discussed the North West London mental health strategy and ways to make the most out of the acute beds. Looking forward to our next meeting of the JOSC, which is set for December the 5th. It will be held at Hounslow House, and on the agenda, we have reports on the North West London Estate Strategy, Mental Health Estate Strategy and Winter Resilience Programme, London Ambulance Service Performance, and a Workforce Strategy update. And I'd be more than happy to have members join us in the audience, and I'm hoping to share in the reports or the minutes from our meeting. And then going on to the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel update for the Scrutiny Committee. The panel has only had one meeting on the 11th of July. And by way of a reminder, the panel's membership comprises of Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Gill, Councillor Kamran, who is Vice Chair, Councillor Chowdhury, Councillor Parazotto, and Councillor Sidhu. There are also new co-optees that will be on the panel this year. This will include a chair of Health Watch Hounslow as a representative from Speak Out. The Speak Out member will be identified closer to the next meeting, depending on availability of their staff. The panel has agreed the terms of reference, and in summary, the deep dive will focus on the SEND employment. This will encompass both the council's offer and broader Hounslow offer. There has been an initial data gathering and meetings with officers to get a fuller understanding of what support is available within the borough. In addition, there have been additional meetings with staff from other councils within higher rates of employment to gain some insight into what is best practice. Councillor Bath was identified as being the cabinet member who will be invited to the next meeting, and Stephen Forbes, Executive Director of Children's and Adult Services, will also be invited to the same meeting. Other speakers are in the process of being identified, and the next meeting will take place on the 15th of November. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharma. That's good. Just good work going on there. If I could just ask Councillor Perisotto for her update on the work on children and young people scrutiny panel as well, please.
Of course, thank you, Chair. So yeah, I'm the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. We had our first meeting in September this year, and again, just to remind everyone, the councillors who are in the panel are Councillor Butt, Joseph, Rahman, Sharma, Emma Sidhu, who's Vice Chair, and Ragwinder Sidhu, and Councillor Karen Smith as well. We've now welcomed a youth co-optee and have confirmed the presence of the Church of England representative. And we are in the process of identifying a parent governor, but I think we have found one. And we're investigating the topic of school readiness, which is measured at the age of 5 of kids entering primary school across geographic and population demographics in Hounslow. We're investigating the current support that's available for school readiness and who is accessing it and what the gaps that exist are. We're also comparing it to other boroughs, especially in London, and how they approach school readiness. We presented some initial statistics in the first meeting about achievement of school readiness and also understanding how it is measured by the government. And through this, we're going to be able to establish a full picture of school readiness in Hounslow from multiple perspectives, and are now in the process of identifying meetings that we can have with teachers, GPs, parents, and other stakeholders that can tell us a little bit more about what's happening with school readiness in Hounslow. And our next meeting will be on the 13th of November.
Again, thank you for that. Should sort of committee members want to understand a little bit more, I'm sure Councillor Perisotto, Councillor Sharman, Councillor Amir will be more than happy to provide further details outside of this meeting, so you can of course get in contact with them. So we move on to agenda item number 8, information only item. This is West London NHS Trust update following consultation on acute mental health provisions. Those of us who were on the committee last municipal year will remember that Dr. Christopher Hilton, Chief Operating Officer, and Joe Manley, Deputy Director of the West London NHS Trust, came to OC in February to seek our views on the Trust plans to permanently close wards in St Bernard's in Ealing, a situation that had begun during the pandemic and had since become the trustees' preferred position. The attached papers are for information only, but set out the results of that wider consultation. A decision to make permanent the closure of Hope and Horizon wards at St Bernard's Hospital in Ealing. So that is agenda item number 8, and just moving on now to item number 9. So this is the work program. So we develop a work program in June. It's good practice to keep the document under review. You will notice there are 2 updates on Ofsted inspections added to the November meeting, for example. Are there any areas the committee thinks are now worthy of inclusion that weren't captured when we agreed the work program? I note that we discussed bringing updates on the recommendations from children and young people and health and adult scrutiny panels. Can we ensure that they are included in future iterations? We must remember, though, that our time as a committee is finite, so if we add new items, we need to consider what might need to be removed. So just moving on to agenda item number 10, any urgent business? There's no urgent business. Yeah, anything from committee adjournment? Yep, Councillor Tapp.
Just seeking a clarification, Chair. Our membership lists Councillor Hina Mir still a member of OSC committee, whereas on Borough Council meeting of 18th July, Councillor Emma Sidhu was appointed as OSC member in place of Councillor Hina Mir, which does not say in our meeting attendance today.
We'll note that. I think it's just a bit of a typo, but I'm sure we will note that for you, of course. Thank you. Just moving on to agenda item number 11. Date of the next meeting is 7th of November 2023. And with that, the meeting of the Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee draws to a close. I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and thank you all the officers that being here today as well, and just helping us all tonight as well. And thank you for everybody at the home having a watch, and of course the audience as well. So thank you. I'll draw the meeting to a close.